What's going on? Matt Malatesta here, back at the VYPE Forum. A lot of things happening here. It's with the George Floyd situation, it's a topic. It's a huge topic. We're in the kid business. I've got some of the greatest leaders in the city of Houston with us again to talk about, just these open conversations. How do we, talk to kids? How do we coach coaches to do that? So with me today, Vivian Dancy, Galena Park ISD Athletic Director, home of the North Shore Mustangs, 3 out of 4 state titles. I also have John Hoye from John Cooper. He's the athletic director there. And then Jason Glenn from Klein, head coach, athletic coordinator, Texas A&M Aggie, NFL athlete. So 3 of my favorite people also in the world of high school sports. Okay. So Vivian, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
What's unique is you were a coach, girls coach. You're kind of in you're the kind of the leader of one of the most prominent football brands in the country at North Shore. You have amazing coaches. What's the message to coaches, not just football, but all coaches at Galena Park High School and North Shore High School? What's the message that you're pushing down to them, if any, about, hey, how do we address this situation in this movement?
Well, Matt, as as coaches, that we always start a dialogue with our kids. Being here on the east side, I've been here, going on 34 years in this district. And when we start our back to school in-service meetings, we always tell the coaches, treat our athletes like you would want someone treating your kid. So we kind of go back to that philosophy. I said a lot of times our kids maybe don't have somebody at home to put an arm around them or, have a conversation with them, not, patting John K. on the back. I said, when you have 300 some kids go through that field house, and as you know, we've seen all kinds here. But, we go back to the basic thing is treating kids fairly, letting them have a dialogue. If they want to come and sit down with you and say, hey, coach, this is going on, how do we handle ourselves? And, a lot of times young men and young women, they're at that stage where they want to be heard, but we still go back to, if I had a kid, how do I want my kid treated when they go out or they're in the locker room or, with the team? We try to treat everybody, fairly.
Coach Glenn, when the video is seen and just what is, and talking to our forum yesterday, very insightful. When you first see this, what is your just general reaction to it?
I'm an honest person, Matt. You get what you see. So with that being said, anger, sadness, unbelievable. I just think there's no place for it. I couldn't believe it. And the thing that hurt me most was my son. I have a 12-year-old son. I'm running out of answers. My son, he played football last year, but he's a violinist. My son loves to play the violin. That's what he wants to do. And with that being said, I'm running out of answers for him on why this has happened. My daughter, she's a senior. She's going to be a senior this year. She's a senior. I'm running out of answers. And the thing about it, more than anything, as a dad, you feel hopeless sometimes. You feel, helpless. You feel hopeless because as a dad, you want to have answers for your kids. But on this one, I'm running out of answers to tell my kids. And I think that's the problem right now.
And that's the theme that everybody seems to have kind of in this business is like, hey, what do I see my kid's future? You know, it's scary. And how do you explain that? So, you know, John, onto you. Talk about, you know, and y'all probably are getting back to the speed and strength, but what's been kind of your general reaction to, okay, I'm a kind of a leader of the athletic community at an SBC private school. What's kind of your messaging also to coaches and just, you know, kids on campus as they kind of come back to speed and strength?
So as far as coaches, you know, I've reached out to probably about half of my staff right now, just having some individual conversations, because we're in a unique position where we're not back in school. We don't have the interaction with the students yet. That will happen beginning next week. And you know, what keeps on going back to in my head is what was, I guess, ingrained in me early on is, you know, the acronym of team together, everyone achieves more. And, you know, the simplicity of that, but how that hopefully, you know, we're looking at athletics as possibly a way to kind of reacclimate with the COVID situation to school. And I think in some instances, it can also serve as an example to how a team can function and how the coherence of those students can set an example and show the success that can come when everybody's on the same page and when everybody's supporting each other and when everybody is looking out for the best interest of the group in general.
You know, Coach Glenn, you know, we're trying to. It's a locker room mentality. Like, how can we get that locker room mentality? And was said yesterday, you've got offense and you've got defense and you got special teams. They can't all be separate and have their own agendas. You got to all have them come together to be a successful team. How do we take or translate the locker room mentality to just virtually everyday life? Because it seems like it's, I mean, granted, teams have disagreements, but it seems like that locker room mentality basically brings together race, socioeconomic, kids as well. How do we shift that to everyday life?
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I've been blessed to be in a high school locker room, college locker room, and NFL locker room. Now, the NFL locker room is the most diverse because you get players from all across the country, right? When you go to maybe say you attend a Texas A&M or Texas or Ohio State, you get majority of the kids from that state. But in NFL, you get it from everywhere, right? So the locker room, it's all about one goal. What is the goal for that locker room? Okay. Now, as humans, what is our goal? What do we want to accomplish? And I think that's the main thing. When you have a goal to what you want to accomplish, more people will stick together because there's one vision that is set. I think if people have one goal, what is our goal? What do we want as people? Okay. What conversations need to be had? They are going to be very, very uncomfortable, just like in the locker room. It's going to be very uncomfortable in the locker room. So as a society, as humans, we need to have those conversations. And the thing that I have told plenty of my coaches, I had a meeting with all my coaches in a Zoom meeting. You know, before our kids lift a weight, stretch, or run, I'm going to speak to every single athlete all together. Whatever I can say to an African-American student, I need to be able to say to all students. That's the one thing. We cannot say, hey, let me take my African-American students and say this to them and forget about the other kids. Your message need to be one deal. As humans, as society, our message needs to be one thing. What is that one thing that we want to accomplish? And I think that's how you can get that locker room mentality into society. What is the goal? You know, like you said, North Shore, 3 out of 4 years they had one goal in mind, and that was to win a championship, along with other things. But that's what they want to do, and they accomplished that. So that's what I think we need to take that locker room mentality of what goes in the locker room and place it right now into society. What is our main goal?
I mean, that 100%. So, you know, John, you might have a different clientele, right? Where you know, it might be predominantly white. And as a parent myself, and, you know, being in this business a long time, I still struggle with, okay, how do we listen? How do we react with, you know, the people that we work with on a daily basis, the kids that we're interviewing? Like, it's so hard to explain it because we don't understand it. What would be any sort of tip that you would like say, hey, this is kind of what they're going through. This might be this when working or befriending, or, you know, look, people are hurting. If you're in the white community, this is maybe how you could react to the black community. That's a long-winded question I just asked. Yeah. I don't know if it came out great, but.
So I think, first of all, I think it doesn't matter the community that you're in, because I think the overwhelming majority of people worldwide think the right way, want to act the right way, and they want the best results. And, you know, just, you know, in education, you know, we joke about, you know, you remember the 5% that are really vocal or really passionate. And you know, it's careful. I think we have to be careful not to, or to remember that just because there's a situation you're in a good situation or a bad situation, doesn't mean you can't have the same end goal. You know, we talk about, you know, the curiosity to wisdom at our school a lot, and our athletes, our students in general. This is something that I think there's interest because collectively everybody wants the same result. Nobody wants to see anybody die, period. And that, you know, when you go back to that fact, nobody wants to see that. And if someone argues about that, you're you know, something's off. But when you start there and you move forward and say, okay, if that's what the end goal is, how do we work towards that? And then I think people start to see, okay, these are the things that we may need to do. We may need to reflect on some things. And yeah, it can be an uncomfortable situation that Coach Klein was talking about. But we have those conflicts in our own families. You know, when we have talks with our parents, with our spouses, with our children. But I think a lot of times it provides some clarity later on. But when you look at that, just talking about, you know, something with your family about whatever the instance is, you're essentially trying to gain the perspective of the other person of how they feel that way. And I think it really translates to this too. You know, what's the different perspectives? What are the different feelings that people are feeling about this whole situation? And, you know, the big thing, I know, Matt, you and I joke about social media all the time in a good way, but it's provided a clear lens that people haven't seen before. You know, you see some firsthand accounts, not just, oh, I heard this, or you see a snapshot. You can see some video and people are seeing that and they're like, oh, I hadn't looked at it from that angle. I hadn't seen that before. I hadn't heard that before. And you know, a lot of times it's thank you for, you know, bringing that to my attention. Now I can, you know, assess how I'm acting or assess my thoughts a little bit more.
Vivian, talk about yesterday. The city, man, was amazing what they did downtown. Great rally. You know, the leaders that were there were great. Just talk about the pride around, you know, the city of Houston as kind of the epicenter of this, with George Floyd being from here. You know, how it all played out yesterday.
You know, I think, and that starts from the top, you know, from Chief Acevedo, the mayor, you know, had a, you know, big part in that, and a lot of his organization. You know, Houston is very, you know, resilient. You know, we go through hurricanes, we go through floods. I think, you know, we've been prepared for a lot of this. And, you know, and when you try to encourage and instill pride in a city, you know, it's the people, but it's the people up top that's doing the organizing. And, you know, those people wanted to have a voice yesterday. And when you have over 60,000 people, sure, you know, when it's over, you know, you have your, you know, your few little pockets of, you know, little incidents that I think were very minor. But, you know, I think the city was ready to show the rest of the world that, you know, we know how to conduct a protest. You know, we need to have our voice, you know, out to the world, that this is what Houston, you know, is about. That, you know, we can handle things. We've trudged through water. You know, we've seen people lose their homes and their livelihood, and we tend to bounce back maybe better than a lot of other people in other areas.
Well said. All right, Coach Glenn, I'm going to give you the last word, because you are on the front lines every day with this, every day as a coach. This was a horrific thing that happened. What can we take out for the next generation that we can spin this into a positive, and this legacy lives on in a positive way?
One of the things, you know, I have an awesome principal, Thomas Hensley. You know, we talked, you know, every day. We talked every day. My superintendent, Dr. McGowan, she called me, asked, you know, about questions, you know, and that's what it takes. What we need, we do not need this to be a trend. A trend is something that starts off hot, then it settles down, right? And one of my goals was, we don't need this to be a Hurricane Harvey deal, to where as soon as tragedy hits, everybody helping each other, which is great. That's what we need. But after a while, now it just settles down. All right, so this right here, this whole deal cannot be a trend. There has to be something that has to keep going to get better at. We cannot go back. we can't go back now. Are there going to be some bumps in the road? Absolutely. But we can't go back with all the steps that we are taking now. We have to keep this thing going. And I think for the generation, you know, the next generation coming up, do better than what we did. Obviously, we dropped the ball in some places. Do better than what we did. Because when we are gone, right, the generation, we don't want them to have to do this again. You know, we cannot be a trend with what's going on. This has to be something that progresses. We always talk about there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I'm a realist. It would never be 100% around the country, around the world. I get that, you know. All right, so we know that. But the light at the end of the tunnel, we have to keep going towards that light. We may not ever reach that light, but progression, going towards that light each and every day, and have the tough conversations. Be comfortable. Be comfortable talking with me. You know, Coach Rapp had called me from the Woodlands. As soon as everything transpired, who's a great coach and a great man, he called me. And we had some of the toughest conversations, just me and him, about everything. And those are the things that's going to happen. And I truly believe that the tough conversations, communicate, listening on both sides. On both sides. It can't be just one side. It has to be both sides have to listen to each other for us and our generation to get more power, to come together and make this thing last. We cannot be a trend with what's going on right now.
Well said. Andre Walker said yesterday, this was just different. And I do believe that this was just a different deal. So,
Absolutely.
Hey, again, City of Houston, your kids, young adults, they're in great hands with these three great leaders. Thank you, Vivian. Dancy, Galena Park ISD Athletic Director, Jason Glenn, Klein Oak, Head Football Coach, Campus Coordinator, and John Hoye, Athletic Director, John Cooper. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see y'all hopefully on the fields.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.